Greetings. God bless. Welcome back. So I'm just going to continue reading about these zombie attacks. These are official military reports that are from antiquity, and it seems like the Roman Empire knew what to do. They just killed the zombies and killed anybody who was bitten. But it seems like there are always some random one that gets away that then uh, the problem uh, creates enough of a difficulty that in 15 or 20 years that the military is called. So I wonder now, so we had that, like people were calling it like a cannibal thing or drugs in 2012 when that guy bit that other person's face off. And uh, there's this video, it's claiming to be a leaked military video where some guy who's claiming to be a military, executive guy said that there was a zombie cell that had been killed, but one got away, and it was that guy in Florida. And the military guy says that they tried covering up, calling it bath salts, but that it seems that it wasn't convincing enough to the public, according to this guy, and that they were unhappy that the CDC talks about, what to do in a zombie apocalypse. So it seems if this video is to be believed, that zombies are real. And I was really surprised to find that there's like military documentation. I had, excuse me, I had seen a website that was talking about zombies, werewolves, vampires. And I was like, oh, okay, like some one individual compiled this data, but I thought it was still kind of folklore. So that these events are listed in history, it's blowing my mind, which is why I'm doing this video. So I began on my last video and I had a little bit of a coughing issue, so I'm going to repeat. So here we have in 850 AD. So the last one before this was in 700 AD. So what it's either people are not doing accurate documentation. Um, there wasn't enough infrastructure to keep the records. So maybe there was um, documentation, but it was lost over time. So this looks like it's 150 years since the last zombie outbreak, and in the previous Roman rule, it seemed like there was a zombie outbreak every 15 to 20 years. So I would guess that there was a lot of zombie outbreaks between 700 and 850. But so there's this friar who recorded how a zombie wandered into out of the Black Forest that uh, bit and infected a farmer, who then turned on his family, and the outbreak spread to the village. And those who survived fled to the Lord's castle, not realizing that some among them had been bitten. So then the outbreak spread there, and neighboring villagers descended on the mob, or descended in a mob toward the infested zone. Local clergy believed that the undead had been infected by the spirit of the devil, and that holy water incantation would banish the evil spirits. This ended in a massacre, with the entire congregation being devoured or turned into living dead. So the neighboring lords and knights united, and so they burned every village and zombie within a 50-mile radius. Not even uninfected humans survived, and the original Lord's castle, who had been inhabited by people who had shut themselves in with the zombies, had been transformed. Oh, had by then transformed into a prison of more than 200 ghouls, zombies, because the inhabitants had barred the gates and raised the drawbridge before succumbing to becoming a zombie. The knights couldn't enter the castle to get rid of them, so the fortress was declared haunted. For over a decade on afterwards, peasants passing nearby could hear the moans of the zombies still within. According to Kutzel's figure, so Kutzel is the friar who documented this, 573 zombies were counted, and more than 900 humans were devoured. And so it seems that yeah, there's other things. So in 1073, so this is a couple hundred years later in Jerusalem, Dr. Ibrahim Obadiah was apparently is offers the one is a pioneer in the field of zombie physiology, and uh, so yet again an unknown source caused an outbreak of 15 zombies in Jaffa, a city on the coast of Palestine. Local militia, using a translated copy of Roman Order XXV11, successfully exterminated the threat. One newly bitten woman was taken under the care of Obadiah, and asked, he convinced the militia to allow him to study the woman, and he did so in the city jail just to keep everything uh, contained. And he proved that the subject was physically dead yet functioning. And he did research on this. And uh, when Christian knights stormed Jerusalem in 1099, he was beheaded as a worshiper of Satan, and almost all of his work was destroyed. Sections of it survived in Baghdad for the next several hundred years, with only a fraction of the original text rumored to survive. Uh, so his life story survived the Crusades, along with his biographer. Uh, it would be nice to know what the name of the book was, but it's a copy of this biography, I believe, is in the National Archives. So, so that was in 1073, and we are now, so that's in 1253. So it's just amazing how it's like the documentation. I mean, I guess the powers, the people in charge don't want documentation of zombies. Like they're going to talk about an infection that suits them. Like they really like talking about the Plague. They don't want to talk about zombies, right? I wonder why. So this one in 1253 AD was in Fisk Hereven in Greenland. So following the great tradition of Nordic exploration, this Icelandic chieftain established a colony in the mouth of this Icelander sailed back to Iceland to get more supplies and whatnot. After 5 years, he returned to find the island found in ruins. Of the colonists, he found 3 dozen skeletons, the flesh picked clean from the bones. It's reported he encountered 3 beings, two women, and one child. Their skin was a mottled gray, bones stuck through the flesh in places. Wounds were evident, but no traces of blood could be observed. Once sighted, the figures turned and approached Marty without responding to any verbal. communication, they attacked the Vikings and were chopped into pieces. The Norsemen, believing the entire expedition was cursed, ordered the burning of the bodies in artificial structures. As his own family were among the skeletons, he ordered his men to kill them as well. Kill him as well. Dismember his body and names. So, is this the most accurate account of a zombie attack within ancient Nordic civilizations? It might explain why all Viking settlements within Greenland mysteriously vanished during the early 14th century. So, you know how there's these graves where scientists say that the bones, these human bones, show human teeth marks. I wonder if it wasn't cannibalism during a famine, but if it was a zombie outbreak, right? Because I think a lot of people would rather die than eat human flesh, honestly. So the next recorded, so we were, that was 1253. The next one is 1281 in China. So this is, 25 years. So it seems like if the reporting is good, you're going to have a report every 15 to 20 to, you know, 30 years. So I think there, when a civilization is keeping on top of zombies, there's going to be an outbreak every 15 to 30 years and they address it. But because uh, the those Satan is ruling Earth, so he doesn't want humans to uh, be spared this horror. And also, if people haven't come to Jesus, then they then they're killed by the zombies and their soul is lost forever. Because that is terminated early. So Satan loves that kind of thing, and as long as it suits Satan's purpose, he's fine with zombies eating people alive and turning people into zombies. So, anyways, 1281, China. The Venetian explorer Marco Polo wrote in his journal that during one visit to the emperor's summer palace in Xanadu, Kublai Khan dis- displayed a severed zombie head preserved in a jar of clear alcoholic fluid. Um, Looks like it was wine, but clear and biting to the nose. So this head, the Khan stated that had been taken by his grandfather Genghis, or Genghis, when he returned to the conquest in the west. Polo wrote that the head was aware of their presence. It even watched them with nearly decomposed eyes. When he reached out to touch it, the head snapped at his fingers. The Khan chastened him for this foolish act, recalling the tale of a low-ranking court official who tried the same thing, had been bitten by the head. This official later seemed to die within days, but rose again to attack his servants. Polo states that the head remained alive throughout his stay in China. No one knows the fate of this relic. When Polo returned from Asia, his story was suppressed by the Catholic Church and therefore does not appear in the official publication of his adventures. Historians have theorized since the Mongols reached as far as Baghdad, the head might be one of the original subjects of Ibrahim Obadiah, which would settle, which would entitle the head to the record of the best preserved, oldest living relic of the zombie specimen. It seems very bad to keep something like that because that's just keeping zombies, the potential for zombies alive. So that was, we were in 1281, so almost 1300. So the next one is about 200 years later, in 1523 ED, in Oaxaca, Mexico. The natives tell of a sickness that darkens the soul, casting a thirst for the blood of their brothers. They tell of men, women, children whose flesh have become gray with rot and possess an unholy smell. Once darkened, there is no method of healing save death that can be achieved through fire, since the body becomes resistant to all arms of man. I believe so. Well, um, So the author is saying that this is a tragedy for the heathen. Uh, this comment, like it seems like Christians were killed by the zombies. I mean, it's just Christians have eternal life with Jesus, but I don't know. So I'm just going to ignore this comment. Sorry about that. This text was supposedly taken from the counts. Oh, that's why. So this Catholic priest was making a commentary about uh, the people not believing in Jesus. Okay. So some believe it to be part of a Vatican order. Okay, so the Vatican is suppressing information on zombies. So, I mean, recently I did another video talking about this kind of thing, and it was deleted by whoever's in charge of this platform. So it seems like they don't want people talking about zombies. So that was 1523. Here we are, 20 more years later. This is in South America. So that was in Mexico in 1554 AD. A Spanish Inquisition under Cardoza were in the Amazon jungle looking for El Dorado, the city of gold. Tupi guides warned him not to enter an area known as the Valley of Endless Sleep, and they cautioned he would find a race of creatures who moaned like wind and thirsted for blood. Many men had entered the valley none ever returned. Most of the conquistadors were terrified by this warning and begged to return to the coast. Cardozo, believing that had the Tupi had fabricated the story in order to hide the Golden City, pushed his expedition forward. After dark, the camp was attacked by dozens of walking dead. What transpired that night is a mystery. The passenger manifest of the San Veronica, the ship that carried Cardoza from South America to San Domingo, had shown he was the only survivor to reach the coast. Whether he fought to the end or simply abandoned his men, nobody knows. A year later, Cardozo reached Spain, where he provided a full account of the attack to both the royal court of Madrid and the Holy Office in Rome. Accused of squandering crown resources by the royal court and speaking blasphemous acts by the Vatican, the conquistador was stripped of his title and died in obscure poverty. His story is a compilation of fragments from many texts concerning this period in Spain's history. No original work has been discovered. Why didn't they tell us what it was? Okay, so that's 1554. 20 years later, in the Central Pacific, 1579, Francis Drake, the pirate who uh, um, he circumnavigated the globe. So he stopped at an unnamed island. Natives warned him not to visit a small nearby cay. I don't know if this is a typo, maybe it's supposed to be bay, that was inhabited by the gods of the dead. According to custom, the deceased and terminally ill were placed on that island where the gods would take them, body and soul, to live on forever. Drake, fascinated by the story, decided to investigate. Observing from aboard ship, he watched as a native shore party placed the body of a dying man on the island's beach. After blowing several claws from a conch shell, the natives retreated to the sea. Moments later, several figures staggered slowly out of the jungle. Drake watched them feed on the corpse before slouching out of sight. To his amazement, the half-eaten body rose to its feet and hobbled after them. Drake never spoke of this incident during his life. The facts were discovered in a secret journal he kept hidden until his death. This journal passed from one personal collector to another and eventually found its way into the library of Admiral Jackie Fisher, the father of the modern Royal Navy. Um, and this admiral named that island Isle of the Damned. So here we are, almost 13 years later, in 1583 AD, Siberia. A scouting party for the infamous Cossack Yermak lost and starving in the frozen wild, was sheltered by an indigenous Asiatic tribe. Once they'd recovered their strength, the Europeans repaid the kindness by declaring themselves the rulers of the village and settled down for the winter until Yermak's main force arrived. After feasting for several weeks on the village's stored food, the Cossacks now turned their hunger upon the villagers themselves. In a savage act of cannibalism, 13 people were eaten while others fled into the wilderness. The Cossacks went through this new source of food within days. In desperation, they turned to the village burial ground, where it was believed the freezing temperatures had preserved fresh corpses. The first body exhumed was a woman in her 20s who had been buried with her hands and legs bound and mouth gagged. Once defrosted, the dead woman revived. Cossacks were astounded, hoping to learn how she achieved such a feat. They removed her gag. The woman bit one Cossack on the hand. With continued short sightedness, ignorance, and brutality, the Cossacks dismembered, roasted, and ate her flesh. Only two abstained. The wounded warrior. It was believed by his comrades that food should not be wasted on the dying, and a deeply superstitious man who believed the meat to be cursed. In a manner of speaking, he was right. All who ate the zombie's flesh died. Um, the wounded man expired the next morning. The one survivor attempted to burn the bodies as he was preparing a funeral pyre. The bitten corpse revived. With the new zombie in hot pursuit, the lone survivor took off across the steppe. Barely an hour into the chase, the exposed zombie froze solid. The Cossack wandered for several days until he was rescued by another scouting party from the Yermak. His account was documented by a historian. The work remained obscure for several generations, housed in the remote monastery on Valem Island in Lake Ladoga. It only now It is only now being translated into English. Nothing is known of the fate of the Asiatic visitors or what their true identity is. The subsequent genocide against these people by Yermak left few survivors. From a scientific point of view, this account represents the first occurrence of a zombie freezing solid. So, I'm a total beginner learning about zombies, but one YouTube video was saying you want to go north to cold places in Alaska because it slows down the metabolism of the zombie. Now, they're not dead, they're just confined by the temperature. So, okay, so the Siberian ones in 1583. Now we're in a couple years later, 1587. So it's 4 years later in North Carolina, Roanoke Island. English colonists, isolated from any support from Europe, sent regular hunting parties to the mainland in search of food. One of these parties disappeared for 3 weeks. When a lone survivor returned, he described an attack by a band of savages, their putrid, worm-ridden skin impervious to powder and shot. Although only one of the 11-man party was killed, four of the others were mauled. These men died, were buried, then rose from the shallow graves within hours. The survivor swore that the remainder of his party was eaten alive by his former comrades, and he escaped. The colony just declared the man a liar and a murderer, and he was hung. A second expedition was sent to recover the bodies, let their remains be desecrated. The 5-man party returned in a state of near collapse, bite and scratch marks covering their body. They had been attacked on the mainland, both by the savages described in the now vindicated deceased survivors, and also by members of the first hunting parties. These new survivors, after a period of medical examination, passed away. Burial was set. That night they reanimated. Details are sketchy. As the rest of the story, one version describes the eventual infection and destruction of the entire town. Another has the Croatan nation recognizing the danger for what it was, rounding and burning every colonist on the island. In a third account, the same Native Americans rescuing rescued the surviving townspeople, dispatched the undead and wounded. All three stories appeared in fictional accounts and historical texts for the next 2 centuries. None present an airtight explanation as to why the first English settlement in North America literally vanished without a trace. I think there's there are traces, and I think it's hidden by who the founders and to the people who are running things. They don't want like the Vatican has censored information about zombies, and the Jesuits and Illuminati and everything. They don't want people to know about such a thing like zombies. I think like to have everybody turn into zombies and everything be a wasteland won't serve the Jesuits and the Illuminati because they need people around. They want entertainment. They want to harvest children and torture people. So they need people around so they can't have everybody annihilated. Of course, I mean, that's why there's this population control, though. They want only what they want to be around. So there's nothing, no such thing as vanishing without a trace. There's no such thing as there's no evidence for God or whatever. It's just being obscured